and gentlemen, welcome back to our final forum of the day. We have the candidates for Congressional District 9, Mr. John Ellison and Ms. Jan Schakowsky. Once again, I'm going to go over the rules. The candidates have agreed to abide by the rules provided by the League of Women Voters. They are as follows. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine their speaking order. The moderator will rotate the order during the forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for introduction. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions. At the end, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. Candidates are also permitted 2 optional 30-second rebuttals. League members will be acting as timers. They're sitting down here in the front. Candidates will have a 30-second and a 15-second warning, so please quickly complete your thought before you see the red stop car. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Questions will be provided by the audience on green cards. Each question will be answered by all candidates, so please ask questions that pertain to both candidates and not to any one individually. League members have the green cards to write questions, and they will be picked up by our volunteers, which are around the room. Questions will then be reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. If you do not hear your question exactly as written, please know that it has undergone a review process by our question committee. The candidates have been asked not to interrupt each other. The moderator will repeat a question if asked. Audience, this is where we ask for some help from you. Please turn off all of your electronic devices. Also, hold your applause and please do not demonstrate in any way to show support or non-support of a candidate. There is space in the lobby for candidates to speak to supporters after the forum. Campaign literature will be available on the tables in the lobby, but no campaign signs may be posted. I also would be remiss if I did not mention that for those of you who are here today but want to go back and review it, or if you would like to tell your friends who couldn't be with us today, these forums will be made available on recording at LWV-AH.org. There's a link to all of the forums that you will hear today. And now I will reintroduce our moderator for today, Mr. Timon Bradley, WGN News anchor and political reporter.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and shout out to those of you who have been here all day for all of the forums. We appreciate it. Now it's time for our candidates for the Congressional 9th District, which covers Evanston, New Trier, Niles, Maine, and Wheeling Townships. We will start with 2-minute introductions by draw. Congresswoman Schakowsky will go first.
Ready?
Please.
Okay. So I'm here today asking for your vote because I believe that now more than ever we need people in Washington who will stand up to the meanness and the corruption and work to foster decency and democracy. This is a dangerous moment in U.S. history. So much is at stake in this election. Affordable health care and prescription drugs, higher wages, quality public schools, a clean and healthy environment, women's reproductive rights, and ending gun violence. And all of these are under attack today, fierce attack, by I believe, a president who is just the opposite of the proper role model for our children. I'm proud to represent one of the most diverse districts in the country, with people of all races and religions and ethnicities that are see welcoming arms into our district. Immigrants and refugees from all over the world are welcomed in the 9th Congressional District, and I myself am the daughter of immigrants who came to Chicago as children with their parents, Jews, who were fleeing violence and discrimination in Russia. And my grandfather was a peddler selling vegetables from a horse-drawn wagon. All 4 of his children went to college, and his granddaughter is a member of the United States House of Representatives. But mine is really a typical, rather than an atypical immigrant story. But now, at this moment, immigrants are being detained, they're being deported. I was at the border, I saw children who are separated from their parents. And as much as the president may want to redefine our country, we are a nation of immigrants, and that's what makes America great. We live in the richest country in the world, the richest moment in history. Problem is that wealth is almost all in hands.
Our time has expired.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
so-
forgot to look.
I'll
Okay.
Mr.
You could have 10 seconds.
Elleson,
You could have mine. You could 10 seconds of mine. You get 10
No,
seconds.
no, that's okay. That's nice of you, though. I appreciate it.
Mr. Elleson, 2 minutes introduction.
My name is John Elleson. I'm also running for the Congress seat in the 9th Congressional District. You know, going to Congress is never meant to be a lifelong career. Our founders meant someone like you or someone in the audience to take time out of their jobs and to go and represent the needs and concerns of the people. That's what I'm doing. I pastor a church here in Arlington Heights, and there's 3 things that defined our campaign. First of all, I really want to go to Washington to be a unifier. I know that sounds idealistic today because there's so much division. Turn on the TV, it depends who you ascribe to. Everyone's arguing and fighting, and I really don't think that's healthy for our country. I know everyone has their positions, but we can do better. I want to go to Washington to make this a district that all of us are proud to live in and a national district of unity. I know, once again, they may seem as some idealistic, but we can do it. Secondly, I want to go to Washington to fight the big problems. We have issues, an unstable economy, cybersecurity, the national debt, healthcare, expensive healthcare. My daughter, she pays $800 here in Arlington Heights, $800 a month. Her deductible is $1,000, $10,000, I'm sorry, about $1,000 a month before she can access her health care. Thirdly, I want to fight power. I think that people that are many times in Washington forget about the little guy. I really think it's important for we to listen to the people and fight for the interests of the people. 15 seconds, there you go.
Okay.
I give it to her if she, no.
No. We can, we'll have an opportunity to give closing remarks. All right, so now let's move to questions, and they're already starting to come in from the audience. Please fill them out on the green cards passed to the aisle. We'll start with a few of mine. Candidates, remember you have 1 minute to answer. We'll begin with you, Mr. Elleson. Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi is still missing. Turkey claims to have evidence he was murdered inside the Saudi consulate. President Trump is warning of severe punishment if he's found dead. What should that severe punishment be? 1 minute.
Well, I think that you got to hold countries accountable. I'm glad that we got that pastor back from Turkey. I think countries that do mischief and they need to be held accountable. Listen, when you travel overseas, you want the force of the United States to be behind you. And if they don't have respect for people traveling abroad and especially the occupation like press, what should be done? I think that, here again, I'm not in that high echelon of power, but I think we need to hold them accountable. Sanctions, they talk about maybe holding them, some of the military stuff. Sure, put it on the back burner until they correct their ways. You got to do it because there's rogue regimes that many times that hurt people's lives, and we need to really create a balance so people have respect for other people's lives.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, 1 minute.
So you may remember that the very first country that President Trump went to after he was elected was to Saudi Arabia. Really unusual kind of decision because Saudi Arabia has not been a player for peace in the region. And what we know about what he said about Saudi Arabia is that, it's a bad thing, this kidnapping and it appears death, torture. They even had bone cutters there in the embassy, the Saudi Arabian embassy. And we'll get more details about it, but it looks like they dismembered his body. But the president said, well, we do a lot of business with Saudi Arabia. $100 billion worth of arms sales to Saudi Arabia. So we don't want to do anything to hurt our country. I think that's very disappointing.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, let's stay with this topic for a second. The Saudi Crown Prince, does the United States need to rethink its relationship with him? Should we cut off weapons sales? 1 minute.
I think we should not. There's legislation now in the House of Representatives, which I've signed on to, and in the Senate, that we should stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia, who's very much involved in Yemen and in Syria, and that is a misguided position for the United States of America. We have coddled and embraced countries that have strong men as their leaders, and actually turned our backs in many ways on our closest allies. And so it's definitely my view that we need to keep our distance from Saudi Arabia. And if the president has said there ought to be, severe punishment, I don't know what that means, but he has also said that we have deals to make with them, and so we want to stick with them.
Mr. Elleson, 1 minute.
Yeah, here again, I'm not sure the whole story, because it just recently came out the last few days. But we do need to have a correct balance of power in the Middle East. Iran, they're a dominant force in the Middle East. So the reason we're selling to Saudi Arabia is to kind of balance that out. It was wrong to remove Saddam Hussein because Iran, Iraq, there was a balance. But if you have Iran taking over the Middle East, that's not good. It's not good for the Saudis, and it's not good for the other countries around them. So that's the reason we're selling the jets to them. So I wouldn't say no, we shouldn't just get out of the deal that quick over something like this unless we found out that there was gross mischief on their behalf. But I'm for helping our friends. In Saudi Arabia, they haven't been always our friends. A lot of the people from 9/11 came there, but they're trying to clean it up. And we need some good friends in that part of the country. Of course, Israel is a good friend, but we need others.
All right, let's move on. Mr. Ellison, 1 minute. The top scientific body studying climate change for the United Nations concluded that the global community will need to take unprecedented actions to cut carbon emissions over the next decade in order to keep the Earth's temperature from increasing to the point where the risk of droughts, floods, extreme heat, and poverty will occur for hundreds of millions of people. How worried are you about climate change, and what can the United States do? 1 minute.
You may find this a little shocking coming from a Republican candidate, but I am concerned about the climate. As a matter of fact, a lot of people in the district have been contacting me about and I don't know a lot about this, the jet fuels that are coming down and causing what they think is cancer. We need to be concerned about clean air. We need to be concerned about our planet. Now, matter of fact, I was at another speech a few days ago. I would even say that we ought to move towards electric cars eventually when technology is there. Because Chicago air pollution is bad in the summer. We need to be concerned about the quality of life that we're leaving to the next generation. So yes, I think emissions, carbon is the real thing. But I also think, though, we need to fight for jobs. And if there's things that don't make sense, then we need to have common sense regulation so we don't put our workers, our blue-collar workers, out of work.
Congresswoman.
So the UN report says we have about 12 years before there's a real turning point in making sure that our planet is sustainable and not overtaken by global warming. 67 times the White House, the president, passed regulations that actually diminish our ability to control fossil fuels. And of course, we've all heard about pulling out of, for all practical purposes, the Paris Accord, which 174 nations in the world, and the United States of America is not one, are part of, to lower these carbon emissions. This is a critical moment. We have to, as citizens, if the president wants to continue the subsidies for oil companies, it's really a shame. We should be helping the fossil fuel, we should be helping alternative energy manufacturers.
Let's move on. Congresswoman, the U.S. unemployment rate fell to 3.7% last month, the lowest level since December 1969. Gross domestic product is on pace for its best year since the housing bubble of the mid-2000s. How can Democrats do better, and who deserves credit?
Well, the issue really is, have wages gone up? We have seen a situation where, yes, there are signs out and people can get jobs, but wages have been stagnant in our country. And instead what we've seen is a huge income gap in this country, where there has been bill after bill, deliberately, like the last tax bill, where 83% of the money in the tax relief went to the top 1% of Americans. And so you can get a job at a low wage, maybe 2, maybe 3, but what we need to do is take positive steps toward making sure that we raise wages in this country. And there are a lot of proposals, including a real infrastructure bill that would do that, and that is a major point for the Democrats: raise wages.
Mr. Ellison, who deserves credit, and how can we improve upon what appears to be good economic news?
You know, I don't ascribe to just the numbers, because I try to keep my ear to the ground, people in the church, because I deal with people that lose their job. They might have had an $80,000 a year job, and then finding out the only thing before them is a $40,000 job. So it's not all about the numbers, it's about the quality of job. I believe one of the things we need to do as leaders is to try to have an influence to get good, high-paying jobs here in our state. When I graduated from high school, you could have got a job at Caterpillar, 1980, for $22 an hour. Now, that'd be considered a halfway decent job. Here's what I want to say. We need to attract good jobs. I don't like it when someone in our church loses their job and then they try to fight to pay their mortgage. We need to take this seriously. We need to leave the next generation better off than what has been handed to us. So it's a big issue, and I think we need to fight for good, high-paying jobs with benefits.
Mr. Ellison, we'll stick with you 1 minute. President Trump recently said women are doing fine, but it's a very scary time for young men in America when you can be guilty of something you may or may not be guilty of. What's your reaction to that?
There's, this last thing really divided our country, the Supreme Court, and I understand allegations. I understand it's a real issue. Once again, I deal with that in our church, people that are assaulted, this kind of thing. But I also said at a meeting not long ago, women have sons also. They have boys. So we have to be careful, and I just think that I'm not taking the lead from our president, what he says there. I'm just thinking what I deal with on a regular basis. We have to be careful. We got to take it seriously, but we have to be, we got to take it credible if someone does give an allegation. But with that being said, you don't want to ruin someone's life over something, maybe if it's not true. So I'm happy the way it played out. I just think that this is a tough issue, but let's not let it divide us. Let's not let this be a subject that pits family against family. Let's allow common sense to rule and to get to the truth and the facts the best we know.
Congresswoman.
It's absolutely remarkable to me that now we've made the victims of sexual assault the men, because anybody could accuse somebody of something. Throughout history, women in places where there is no witness have been assaulted. Mostly those kinds of activities don't happen in public. And what about the girls? What about the women? What's the message that we're sending to them? You better not stand up. You better not accuse. I saw that hearing, all of it, and it seemed to me that the demeanor of Dr. Ford compared to the demeanor of Judge Kavanaugh, that it was clear to me that she was telling the truth. We don't want to be saying to our boys, go ahead, do whatever you want, high school and college, and you too could be on the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Congresswoman, we'll stick with you 1 minute. You endorsed Congressman Dan Lipinski's primary opponent, Marie Newman, citing Lipinski's opposition to abortion. There's a lot of talk about progressives pulling Democrats to the left. Is there no longer space for centrist Democrats?
Well, actually, it was not just, if you had read what I said, his position on reproductive rights, although that is a very important issue for me. He is the co-chair, as a Democrat, of the Pro-Life Caucus. He's entitled to his opinion, but I don't think entitled to try and pass a constitutional amendment to take that right away from women. But he has also, I think, betrayed us on a number of issues, not always good, in an immigrant-rich district, on immigration reform, voted for a bill that was harsh on organized labor, on labor unions. And so there were many reasons that I thought we needed someone else to represent a district that his views were not consistent with. In fact, quite different from what the polls showed his constituents actually wanted.
Mr. Elleson, you could comment on Congressman Lipinski's primary if you want, but what's the role of moderate Republicans? Do moderate Republicans still exist? Is there space for them?
Yes, absolutely there is. And, these are tough issues. I have several kids that have graduated here in Arlington Heights, and, they go through the teenage years, and you got to support them. You have unexpected things that come up. In our church, I was one that, we didn't have a different variety. Now we're a church we're multicultural, third black, third Spanish, and in our church. But we have gay and lesbian couples in our church. I never pastored those kind of churches before. Here's what I'm getting at. But they fit in well. As a matter of fact, they're some of our great people. All I say is sometimes you learn and evolve. Here's what it comes down to. You got to care and love people. You got to be concerned where they're at. And I think that I know my opponent, she does. I probably think that we can get to a level where, in 9 months, come on, that's killing a child. I think we can dial it back a little bit when it comes to some things.
All right, let's move on. Audience, some great questions coming in. Let's see what we have here. Mr. Elleson, 1 minute. How is the concept of checks and balances in government supposed to work? How is it currently working? And I'll just add, should President Trump be impeached? 1 minute.
Checks and balance are important. Our press is important. Thank you for being the moderator. Checks and balance. You have Congress, you have president. I'm sure every president, whoever it is, in either party wants to go there and they want to get everything through. Actually, it's a good thing they don't. And it's a good thing that it slows things down because it takes the Senate, they move a little slower, even according to my pace, but it's good. So we need checks and balances because that's the way it works. Listen, if they want to put something here in Arlington Heights, a big building up, aren't you glad that it takes time? Because, we don't want to have the building up and find out that it wasn't a good fit. So we have community involvement. We have people come to meetings. That's what we need. Here again, no one in power likes it, but it's a good thing. So checks and balances are good for the country.
Congresswoman.
We have no checks and balances right now. A president who acts, I think, in unprecedented ways is now needs to have checks and balances. If for no other reason, I think we need definitely this November 6th to have a Democratic House. So that at least there is some serious debate. There are some serious compromises that can be made. That there is some power. Many of you may not realize how powerful a majority is. They make the decision on every bill that gets heard and every one that does not get heard. And so they completely control the agenda. So we absolutely need to have checks and balances. And as far as impeachment, I think this is not the moment to be talking about impeachment. We have an investigation that's going on right now. We need to wait to see what happens there.
And Mr. Elleson, was that a yes or no on impeachment?
No, I would not go down
Ms.
that road.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, let's move on to immigration. The question states, what can be done to resolve the problem of illegal immigrants in our country?
I think the problem right now is that there's no recognition that we are a country of immigrants. Talked about my family's background coming here. I don't know, if I asked you to raise your hand, how many people in this room, at least their grandparents were born elsewhere, if not their parents like mine or themselves born elsewhere. That's who we are. It really does make America great. And when you see human beings in cages like dogs are put in, when you see children who will maybe never see their parents or grandparents, I saw that all when I was down at the border. And it is disgusting. And it is not who we are. And we need to have a welcoming immigration plan while we make sure that we have real borders. I'm for that. But the idea that we should try and find every way to deport an immigrant or not let them in is wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Elleson, immigration, a minute and 5 seconds.
I think that we as a country need to decide what we want our laws and policies to look like. I'm for lenient immigration, but I'm also for the rule of law. We have to decide what we want, and we all need to live by it. It can't be a divisive issue into the next generation. You know, once again, I'm sorry to bring up about our church. We have lots of illegal people in our church. I fight for them regularly. I go to court proceedings. I write letters. I do whatever I can do to help them. I believe in helping. I lived in China a few years. My wife taught before we got married at the Mexican border. Immigration's big, but we have to be a country of laws. We have to be welcoming, but we have to enforce. So when we had the Prospect Heights fire, our church took the lead. We had a lot of illegals living there. I said, don't worry, ICE will never come in here. So you got to help them and protect them, but we have to also enforce our border, or else it's not fair for everyone else.
The Congresswoman would like a rebuttal. 30 seconds, please.
I think the policy that we have now is completely inhumane. Children in our district go to school terrified that when they get home that their parent or parents will not be there. All over our district, parents are trying to figure out who will take care of my children if I get deported and put into detention. This should not be. People are fleeing for their lives to come to the United States of America, and until, that's a stop?
Those are
Was it
tough.
50?
They're tough. You
Just finish your thought.
I
Go ahead.
thought
5 seconds, finish your thought.
Go ahead.
We need to be a country, and proudly, of immigrants, even with laws. But the laws have been changed. Right now, if you were fleeing for your life, you could come here. Now, if you don't go through the right, proper path, you're put into detention.
All right. Mr. Elleson, a final thought on that?
No, I just think that we will do well as a nation to decide what we want our laws to look like, have a big year fight, town halls, but then pass the laws, and we all should live by them, and we all should enforce them so that our law enforcement know how to do their job. It's not fair for them if they don't know which laws they're going to have to follow, and then we all should live by them and get behind them.
All right, let's broaden it out. Sticking with you, Mr. Elleson, what measures do you support to address our nation's security?
National security?
Yes.
Okay. National security is big. I think that should be one of the primary things of our government. Our government needs to make us as citizens safe. As a matter of fact, I think that we need to really put money into a missile defense system so that we can't be threatened. I know North Korea seems to be working out, but long term for the next generation, we need to have the best technology. We do need some kind of shield. National defense is big. Cyber defense is big. We need to be proactive. We can't wait till the grid gets taken down until we find out that some country is doing mischief on us. We need to be proactive. We need to make sure that our infrastructure and electric and these things are well. And I'm thankful for the $800 billion, the defense budget that was appropriated. We need to rebuild our military. We need to be strong so we don't have to use it.
National security, Congresswoman, 1 minute.
So I don't think we're more secure because the president has embraced Vladimir Putin, because he has said that Kim Jong-un, that they're in love with each other in North Korea. And I don't think the only measure of our security is our defense budget. In fact, the defense budget, the billions and billions of dollars that we spend on is more than the Pentagon itself has asked for. And I think that part of national security is the security of our families, making sure that they have the health care they need, that they have good public schools to go to, that they have a decent wage, that 1/5 of our children in this country are food insecure. They go to bed hungry at night. That is also national security, and we need to do more to assure it.
All right, Congresswoman, 1 minute. What are your ideas on improving funding for education?
You know, the state and the federal government have a responsibility here. Illinois is one of the states that has the lowest percentage of money, 25%, that comes from state government. But we have in charge right now of our education system, and I'm in support of public education as a former teacher, that her whole career, Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, has been to oppose public schools. And so I think that we need to have people in charge of our Department of Education and everyone in Congress that has a commitment to quality education for every child in the United States of America, and we are far from that.
Mr. Elleson?
I believe in quality education. 5 of my kids graduated from college. Here's what I didn't like, and I probably could write a book now on how to get loans and government grants, joking a little bit. But it seems like it's, here you get the Pell Grant, and then the college raises it because they know they're getting money from the government. And it seems like it's a vacuum. And, and then they have to take out the same amount of loans and before the Pell Grant. Here's what I want to say. We do got a problem. Public education is important. I had some of my kids graduate from CLA, but my daughter is a public school teacher here in the area. I went to a public school. I'm for public education. Matter of fact, we need to have the best public education in the world. And I'm for teachers. We need to pay them right, but we need competition. Other countries, they can inch ahead of us. That's why we have to invest. We have to put education first and foremost so we could be.
All right, Mr. Elleson, now 1 minute. What would you do to promote school safety?
School safety is a big thing. I don't think there's one answer, but it's something that we have to stay on. I met one of the board members of District 21 here the other day. I was at a meeting, and there's on a ballot to raise some funds to go through all the different schools and upgrade. I think we really need to take that seriously and make sure our schools are safe. I've spoken at Elk Grove High School the other day. I've spoken at Niles North or West, one of them, in Niles. And you know what? They seem to have it down. I think we just need to stay on it so that the bad guys don't get ahead of us. We need to put it first so that our kids are protected.
Congresswoman.
So I had the privilege of being with some of the kids from Parkland in Florida last week. And they've been going around the country and plenty of time in Chicago. And I admire them so much because they've made sure they're not just talking about the mass shootings, but they're talking about the everyday shootings that we see in our city, and mostly in Chicago. They know and we should know, that 60% of the guns that come into Chicago are from Indiana and other states, because we have pretty good gun laws. So we need federal legislation supported by about 90% of Americans. And that would include background checks, and a majority of Americans also approve of not having assault weapons, military killer weapons on our street legal. And so there are common sense rules that are overwhelmingly supported by the majority of Americans, even NRA members, that we need to pass.
Congresswoman, let's stick with this topic. 1 minute. Are there any gun restrictions that you think go ideas for new gun legislation that you think goes too far and would infringe upon the Second Amendment? And what steps should be taken to promote gun violence prevention in our community?
Well, first of all, we have never seen, I've been in the Congress a long time, and I've never seen a bill that I would say goes too far, because we can't even get legislation for background checks, universal background checks. You can be in the city of Chicago, drive over to a gun show in Indiana, pick up the back of your trunk and load it up with guns. We don't check people at the border coming across and sell those guns. These are simple, everyday, common sense things that we need to do. And so far, there hasn't been one tiny thing that we have been able to pass, but I do believe it's coming. And I think the NRA has met its match in these high school students, and that we're going to see some change because they're undauntable.
Mr. Elleson, 1 minute.
The NRA sent me a questionnaire, and they may not have been happy with all the different answers. My son works for a congressman. He's a deputy chief of staff in D.C., and it's hard to go against the NRA, he tells me. I will say this, though. Getting all the guns out of the hands of the bad people are the real deal. There's a lot of mental illness. There's a lot of things that are behind the scenes that we need to deal with. It's not just the guns. It's the availability. I don't own a gun. My wife who's here, won't allow me one, though I wouldn't want one anyway. But I will say this. There are people that are into it, and we need to protect it. We have a Second Amendment. But we need to deal with mental illness. We need to deal with jobs. Listen, if people on the South Side or other places, if there was good jobs there, maybe they could be deterred from some of these things. Education, and we need to invest in some. If I was President Obama, first thing I probably would have done, I would have built a factory on the South Side. I know governments don't build factory, but I would have found them so we could get jobs for these kids. Sorry.
The Congresswoman has asked for a rebuttal, 30 seconds.
There is very clear evidence in states that actually passed some regulations, like Connecticut, and that's where Sandy Hook and the children that were killed there. And they passed legislation to regulate guns, and you saw a drop in the number of shootings and murders in that state. This is not an intractable problem. We can deal with this and reduce gun violence. We're the only country in the world that has so many guns available and easily available in our communities right now. And so I think it's absolutely incumbent on us to join the rest of the world and regulate in a sensible way these guns. We're not talking about hunters.
Right. All right. Mr. Elleson, you mentioned the need for jobs. So what would you do to support a vibrant economy in our area?
We had 4 people in the Republican primary, and I was at one of the different ones. I never ran for office before, but I said, hey, we need to get, and part of the speech, we need to get Amazon here. We need to get Apple here. They laughed at me. Oh, they will never want to come to Illinois. I think we need to think big. Illinois used to be a great state. It still is a great state. And we need to be a place where our kids could stay. So I think we need to have regulations so that we are competing with Indiana. We are competing with Ohio. So we really do need to attract people. We need to do things. Maybe do got to build a sewer line to run across the plant they want to build. Whatever it needs to be. Jobs need to be the most important thing. In my opinion, it'll solve our debt problem. It'll solve maybe substance abuse problems. It will solve lots of family things. Listen, if someone has a good job and have to go to work, that takes care of a lot of the different things. So I think that should be a big thing of what a representative ought to do.
Congresswoman, how do we support a vibrant economy in our area?
So the trickle-down theory that if you give tax breaks to the wealthy and to corporations, which we did a huge corporate tax decrease, that somehow there'll be an investment in jobs and in infrastructure and everybody will do better. That hasn't worked. It's never worked. They keep trying it, but it doesn't work. What I believe is you put money in people's pockets. The people in your church who are really hurting. 43% of Americans cannot pay their monthly bills every month. That's almost half of us. But you put some money in their pockets, they're going to go out and shop. They're going to go buy. We don't need more people who can buy a yacht. We need more people that are going to get school clothes for their children and put a meal on the table. That is what is going to create investment in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and make us wealthier.
If I may, so how do we create those jobs, Congresswoman?
No, I'm saying that if you have people with money in their pockets that are going to go out and buy things and build demand, that will stimulate the economy. So it's either, do you start it from the bottom up, or do you trickle down and give the money to rich people, which has never worked? And so that's how I believe that when we have a vibrant middle class that's built, that we will have a vibrant economy and create new jobs from the consumers that are going to be out there buying.
Mr. Elleson, a final thought. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think some trickle down's not bad as long as it trickles down to everybody. The blue collar guy, as long as they share in a portion of the pie. But taxes, we got to be a state that has some lower taxes so that we could get companies to come, so that they can want to be here and build and want to employ people. So I think we have to have a regulation system that is not onerous, that is not something that drives people away. We need common sense so that our next generation can find this as a great place to live.
Let's move on. Congresswoman Schakowsky, cybersecurity, there are foreign and domestic threats. What can we do?
So I spent 8 years on the Intelligence Committee, and it was clear that cybersecurity is really a place where we need more expertise, and we need to work harder every single day in order to make sure that we can protect our nation. Look, from every aspect, not only in a kind of a military-like realm, but we already know that without cybersecurity, that the Russians attacked our voting mechanism. And for the League of Women Voters, this is a real concern. We want to make sure that our elections are secure, that our country is made more secure from enemies of ours that are wanting to hack into everything and dominate even our politics here. It's a concern of mine right now, whether or not there are countries like Russia that are trying to manipulate our elections coming right up.
Mr. Elleson?
Cybersecurity, it's big. It's a matter of fact, whether it's a foreign enemy or a local one. You don't want to wake up one day and the internet down and take the government to figure out how to deal with it. We need to be proactive this. We need to get the best engineers, scientists to figure out how to create shields that other countries can't hack, but also anyone that wants to create nuisance in our life. So whether it's our electrical grid, whether it's the internet, whether it's the internet controls your banking. You don't want to wake up one day and find out, Bank of America, they messed up my account. Listen, we need to shield the United States from the problems that are of the 21st century here. Oh, I have a few seconds left. I'm done.
All right, Mr. Elleson. let's move on and do you think do you think every municipality should be obligated to ensure that affordable housing exists in the community? 1 minute.
Is that me?
Yes.
Yeah, I belong to the local clergy association here, and we fought a few times to try to get low-income housings here. I don't care if you're affluent city. We ought to be thankful here in Arlington Heights. Every city needs to set aside to help people. We have several low-income people in our church. As a matter of fact, right over here, we helped get 2 in the one that was built over here. I dedicated, blessed their home, whatever you want to call it, thinking, man, I ought to move here. No, it's a nice place. So every city needs to do that. Why is that? Because we shouldn't push people out. We need to be compassionate. And then, there's nothing wrong with having nice homes. Everybody, that's good. But we also need to care about those less fortunate and do whatever we can do to help those that may be hard on luck or less fortunate.
Congresswoman?
I'm a great supporter of affordable housing. We are seeing such an increase in homeless families, that people with disabilities who are out on the street. I mean, housing, a safe place and a roof over your head seems so basic that the United States of America, the richest country in the world, at the richest moment in history, that we ought to be able to make sure that everyone has a safe place to live. We get so many calls about housing, and it's the most intractable problem. It's very hard to find senior housing, family housing, disability housing. It's really, really hard. And we could afford it, and we could do it, and it should be in every community.
All right, moving on. Campaign finance. Congresswoman Schakowsky, by dollar amount, who is your biggest donor of this campaign? And do you have any ideas for campaign finance reform?
Well, I will say that the vast majority of my contributions are individual contributions. There's a lot of corporate PACs that I don't accept any money from. And what we need to do is essentially get the money out of politics, get the money out of elections, not consider that corporations are people, and that money is free speech, and that we need to change the decision of the Supreme Court on Citizens United and make sure that we can empower small donors. And take away the power of the big money, often hidden money. You don't even know where it's coming from. We need full disclosure of where money is coming from as a minimum right now.
Mr. Elleson, by dollar amount, who's your biggest campaign donor this cycle? And any thoughts on campaign finance?
You'll probably laugh at me. For the first 3 months, someone sent us a check and I didn't cash it. See, I don't believe in taking money from, my son forced me to put a little button on our website. I just think that if you want to run for office, now I know you need help, but I think you need to take upon most of it yourself. Not that I have a lot of money, but we knock on doors. I don't think money's the answer. We've probably taken in, I know you're not going to like this, we've probably taken in $2,000. We could have done more. We spent maybe $58,000 of our own, all I had. But listen, I just don't think money is where it's at. I think you got to go door to door. I think you got to win people over. After we won the primary, I started full force then. I visited every Starbucks here in the district. I've been in every district multiple times. Matter of fact, most evenings we go to bed at 3 in the morning. It's been 20-hour days for months. I think money, I got to stop.
All right, Mr. Elleson, interesting question here, even if maybe I don't agree with it. What can the government do to encourage and foster an unbiased media?
What the government can do to foster?
1 minute.
Yeah, I think that you need to be honest with the media. The media is at times with elected officials, they go back and forth, whether it's the Obama administration, he had trouble with the media. When I shouldn't say trouble, because they hold you accountable. But that's the beauty. The amendment where it protected free press, religion, and free speech is the most important one we have our country. Okay, Trump says some things that a lot of us don't like, but the press is a huge part of what keeps our country on track. We should hold our elected officials accountable so that we have honest government. Honest government is important for all of us so that we don't have corruption and things that will not be good for our families.
Congresswoman.
I think freedom of the press is so indispensable for protecting our democracy. And I think that what the president has done to undermine belief in the free press, to undermine the belief in facts, in science, in reality, is very, very dangerous for our democracy. I think that God bless the free press right now for exposing so many things that we need to understand, that we need to know, to contradict many false statements that we have heard, particularly from the President of the United States. It's never pleasant to be criticized by the media, but that's exactly what keeps us a democracy that really works. And I am very worried about these attacks. I think when the president talks about the lying media and the crooked media, that he's undermining us.
So let's move on, Congresswoman. Let's talk about the debt. About $1 trillion, latest CBO score, and the tax cuts in the short term are contributing to that. What can we do about it?
Well, first of all, this latest round of tax cuts, the first round, $2 trillion of debt over the next 10 years. And then just before we left Washington, passed another tax bill that adds another trillion, $3 trillion of debt over the next 10 years. And guess what they're saying about it? We have to solve this debt problem. Where are we going to get the money? How about Social Security and Medicare? Those cuts are now a reality on the table. And I think it is absolutely, destructive to our country to see that. And most of that money, almost the bulk of it, goes to the wealthiest people in our nation. Shame on them. And I say them because no Democrats voted for those tax cuts.
Mr. Ellison?
I think no matter who the administration or the president has the presidency, which party, the debt would be going up. It's on a cycle. And it did it with the last one and this one. Now the tax cuts, that's could be an issue. Hopefully we can have some growth. But listen, look at some of the malls around here. There's a store empty, there's a store, they hop around. But if you get them all filled, there's more that comes in receipts. What we need to do, we got to get some good jobs. We got to get some good wages. We got to start making some things here again. We got to really see that our economy takes off so that we can bring in more receipts. We have a terrible debt problem, but we're not going to deal with it by just taxing our way out of it. We got to grow the economy. What we have to do is we need good jobs so that people pay in. If more people are paying in, there's more people. Matter of fact, I kind of believe that everyone ought to pay in something. And if everybody paid in something, 10%, whatever, there'd be more in our coffers.
All right, so we have time for one more question. We obviously started late. That's why we're approaching the bottom of the hour and still going. One last question. Starting with you, Mr. Ellison. What can all of us do to stem the divisive politics?
I think we got to build bridges. Like I say, my son works for, he's the deputy chief of staff for a congressman in D.C., in Springfield, Missouri. He works in D.C. But I was out there about 3 months ago, and I go out there a couple times a year to visit him, make sure he's doing okay, like any parent want to check up on their kids every once in a while. But here's what I did. There is a congressman that's trying to impeach the president out of Houston. It's one of the bills or one of the legislations that's in Congress right now. It's not getting anywhere, but here's what he did. After 40 minutes of talking to him in the halls of the Rayburn building, he took off his congressional pin and gave it to me. Here's what I'm going to say. You got to build bridges. Send me to Washington, I'll build bridges. As a matter of fact, I'll be a friend to every congressman there. And I'll make our district proud. Do we have differences? Yes. But you can be nice, you could build bridges, and it could be something where we could get the big items done.
Congresswoman, 1 minute.
So I've served all the years of the Bush administration. And we were in the minority a good deal of that, and we really got things done. And the reason for that is the definition of the job on both sides of the aisle was that at the end of the day, fight like cats and dogs, compromise. And then, pretty much after Barack Obama was elected, a group came into the Congress, the Tea Party, and they said, compromise is a dirty word. We did not come here to compromise. That makes it really, really hard. But I do believe that as a result of the November 6th election, if we have some checks and balances and the Republicans and the Democrats are in charge of the House of Representatives, we will have an opportunity to reach across the aisle and get things done. I look forward to that day.
All right, let's close. We've run out of time. 1 minute for each of you. We'll start with Mr. Ellison. Go ahead.
What I worry about is that after this election, we'll have 2 years of fighting again. Sure, some people want the other side to take over the House. I think what we need is, once again, to build bridges. I think if they take over, some may not agree here, I think it'll be 2 years of trying to impeach the president. I think that we'll go backwards on some things. What we need to be concerned about is jobs, our economy. We don't want to go back and fight and have a House investigation here, a House investigation here, and 2 years then we'll say, let's wait for the next election for the presidency. We could do better than this. Listen, I'll hold the president accountable. I'll do my job, but I don't think the answer is just switching over and have some chairman on the other side trying to be an obstacle in progress. I think we need to keep it going. Am I happy with everything? By no means. But I think the Mueller investigation...
All right, we got to move on. Congresswoman, 1 minute clock.
The agenda that the Democrats have rolled out for the people includes 3 main things. One is affordable health care. That's a priority. Better jobs and wages. That's our second priority. And the third is clean government. And we are not going to waste our time fighting. We are going to not waste our time fighting for ordinary families who have been neglected by this administration, for our environment. We're going to be fighting for good jobs, union jobs, supporting organized labor, and we're going to make this country much better for our children. We're going to focus on our kids as well, on education. But we have an agenda that is for the people. We're going to stick to it. That's our priority, not continuing this divide that we have seen.
All right, that's all we've got. How about a round of applause for our candidates?
Good.
There's campaign here, and the lobbyists to meet it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.